When did you first grow curious about the paranormal? Dare you dig deeper? You are listening to House of Asher.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is House of Asher. I am your host, Steve Asher, and it's a lovely Sunday out there. It's chilly here in Western Kentucky, but the sun looks really pretty. So if you got your window, or at least not your windows, your window blinds or shades or sashes or whatever you've got, a little bit of that southern light come in, it should be okay. I probably should say you guys are probably listening to me either on Spreaker, iHeart, iTunes, SoundCloud. A whole myriad of different things. Also, probably hearing me on Para UK Radio, sort of the mother flagship of my station, which carries me from pole to pole and around the equator. Love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you are interested in checking the show out, also on YouTube under House of Asher, feel free to check it out, or check out www.steveeasher.com. That's all lowercase and together to find out about some of my guests, the show, the books I'm working on, appearances, and all that other boring stuff. But we're not going to be having boring stuff today. We're going to have a pretty interesting guest on, and what we're going to be touching on, well, I'll just say this, and I'll explain more after the break. Most people think of hospitals and places like that as a place of rest and of respite and of healing and of, your health and mental stability, and all those things are the absolute apex of their concern. But that's not always true. In fact, there have been several locations where some pretty nefarious stuff has happened. Very dark science, and it's left people more than just shaken. Some people have been permanently damaged due to these really unwelcomed and really not explained to, and you really got permission for some of this testing that's happened to them. And that's what we're going to be talking about in just one moment. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. Wild Hair Studios Rock Shop in Paducah, Kentucky has a lot to offer. Their tagline is positive energy that works. And it really is your one-source shop for healing crystals, aromatherapy, essential oils, unique stone jewelry, psychics, light work, chakra balancing, you name it. Even sound healing. Everything. They offer it all. Even classes in light work. And this is all located at 311 Broadway, very centrally located in Paducah, Kentucky. And you can also look them up on www.nicerockshop.com. Make sure to go in there and tell them that Steve sent you and get your enlightenment on. That is Wild Hair Studios Rock Shop in downtown Paducah, Kentucky. All right, everybody, we are back here at the House of Asher. My special guest today is Miss Lana Mills Sowchuk. She is a former business analyst at the RBC, which is the Royal British Columbian, or I'm sorry, I know I said that wrong, the Royal Canadian Bank, and she is now a rally organizer, among other things, and she has a very personal stake in a very large lawsuit that's happening right now. It has to do with her father being improperly admitted. I believe it's to Allen Hill Memorial Hospital, if I'm not getting my facts wrong. Lana, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
So, wow, okay.
I'm here.
It's
actually the Allen Memorial Institute.
Oh, got you. So sorry about that. I got my facts straight.
And I haven't worked for the Royal Bank for 23 years, and I have my own business now. So.
Well,
that's all.
That's fine. Well, but that was part of the, of your building up to who you are now and whatnot. So I'm not too far off. Maybe I get at least an attaboy for some of the facts straight. But anyway, I know you've been doing the organizing of some rallies. I also know I believe you're getting ready to do one at a college that I'm not sure. Did they have something to do with some of what happened? And can you touch on a little bit? I'm sorry?
McGill University.
Okay. Can you touch on a little bit of, first of all, what happened and what program or whatever was this connected with? Because apparently this was a very large, a snake with a lot of heads, not just in Canada, uh, throughout U.S., including Lexington, Kentucky. I just recently found out. Also, we're doing experimentation on people.
Right. Yeah. So you want me to start with my story?
Yeah, yeah. Let her
My
rip.
father, my okay, my father's name was Ivor, Ivor. He was going attending the Royal Victoria Hospital asthma clinic back in 1952. They said that if he went to the Allen Memorial Institute, they could cure his asthma. Well, they didn't cure his asthma. They wrecked his life for the rest of his life and our lives and everybody else's lives in our family by doing experimental treatments on him for brainwashing purposes. And it was all funded by the Canadian government, McGill University, the CIA, and the Royal Victoria Hospital, which is Allen Memorial is part of the Royal Victoria Hospital. So he was put in there for experiments. He never consented to anything that they did to him, and my mother had to pay for his treatments of torture because we didn't have Medicare in those days. Okay. And so it goes on, and so that was 1953. He was admitted, and within the period between 1953 and 1960 something, he went through 54 high voltage shock treatments, followed by 54 grand mal seizures. And he was put into an insulin coma for 36 days with a recording beside him. I don't know how the factual. I remember my mother telling me that the recording said, "Your mother hates you." It's not in my medical files, but my mother said it was over and over and over in his ear for 36 days, 24 hours a day, trying to just make depattern the brain for, we're looking into a lot of stuff now that we're realizing why they were doing this, to be ahead of the Russians and the Koreas and all these other countries who'd already started doing this brainwashing pattern, and they wanted to get ahead of them. So they took our people randomly. My father and another one of my colleagues' fathers are the only two that I know of that weren't brought in for depression or postpartum depression. These two men were put in for asthma. My father was. And after he came out, he was not the same. He wasn't my father. He had no judgment whatsoever. He would do silly things like, what can I give you examples of? He started a fire in the oil stove in the basement with no chimney. He just did all kinds of crazy things that he had no judgment. He didn't know between right and wrong when he was finally released from the hospital. So there's a lot that, he did that I don't know what you want me to tell you, Steve, or...
Well, let me interject there real quick. I know I know after World War II, which I'm 50 now, but I'm lucky enough to have depression era parents who told me a lot about, especially the Cold War, and it was pretty nefarious. Mm-hmm. It was, they would take the best Nazi scientists and kind of divvy them up and put them on. Some went, everybody thinks about the space program, but nobody thinks about like the PSYOPs programs and all the different super soldier sort of stuff. I remember I was a big comic book kid, and of course you had like Captain America and all that, and that's really a simplified, dumbed down idea of what they were trying to do. But obviously they never showed them shocking people or immersing them in water and like you said, putting stuff on loop and trying to basically break down whatever they clung to that was their sort of their bedstone of sanity. And
another thing, in my father's files, it says right in his medical files, Ivor Mills is not a good candidate for shock treatment. More than once it says that in his files, but they still continued and gave him 54 high voltage shock treatments.
Well, let me ask you this too. I know, as of having family with epilepsy, that a lot of times genetics and things play a role, where, like, and obviously, if you have enough grand mal seizures, those are major seizures. They
Hmm.
will damage, and I don't say this lightly or in any way to try to be mean. Obviously, it's going to cause brain damage, and you could
Hmm.
everything like you said from can cause blindness. It can cause loss of memory, like you said, the judgment, lack of judgment, almost like you're dealing with a young kid. And yeah, like you
I
said,
grew up
it's
with a father that was a kid.
right.
Yeah, he
You
was a
have to
kid,
re-raise your dad, and that had to have been
right?
insane for you.
And before that, he was climbing the ladder. He was a sheet metal mechanic. He was going up the ladder in his workplace. We were fine. We were financially fine. He couldn't hold a job after. So it put us into poverty. Um, Secondhand clothes. I ate so many bloody potatoes. You have no idea. Because my mother couldn't afford, because he wasn't working. He couldn't work and provide for his family.
Right. They basically the hospital and whatever organizations basically destroyed your livelihoods. Let me ask you this. Now, you'd mentioned the CIA, and I'm not sure what the British or Canadian equivalent that is. I've heard about different. Uh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on some of the names. They talked about different areas, like like almost like a special ops for certain things in certain rooms and whatnot that they kind of gave them code names for and all that. You know, the Cold War, they love their code names. Um, was this
Hmm.
tied in with like a almost like an MK Ultra type situation, or what, or what
Oh,
was this tied to?
definitely, definitely.
Okay,
It was, yeah. MK Ultra was the code name for the CIA.
okay.
For
Now,
this,
do
and I
you?
mean,
That's
Dr. Cameron was the leader of the pack.
right. Well, that's what I was going to ask. I was going to ask you if it was connected with Dr. Cameron because he's infamous. I mean, uh,
Yeah.
it's just almost like you have like a Mangala, and then now his name kind of comes right up, second place. If not above it now.
His name's all over my father's medical files.
Right. Well, I mean, what
Yeah.
was the because obviously people who are look at it maybe from the outside to go, well, maybe some of these were very extreme, and you had some bad cases that went this way or that way. Did anything positive ever come out of it? And what was the end game? Were they trying to make a super soldier, or what were they trying to make?
They were. They were trying to figure out how to depattern the brain so that this is what I've heard. If you were captured as a prisoner, you wouldn't be able to say anything because your brain would have been depatterned. Um, all this stuff, but nobody came out better from what they went through. Everybody that I'm aware of came out terrible after. So it was a wasted project in my eyes, and destroyed many lives.
Now, I
Destroyed
know.
many, many lives. So, and Dr. Cameron, he came from Scotland, and he came over. He was living in the States, in Albany, New York, and he would be working in Canada, and he always had his address in the States though, but he's pretty much stayed up at the hospital all the time in Montreal.
Do you know how many people
You have
and
to
kind of
understand,
how many years this went on? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to walk on you there.
60. Well, it's been over 6 years now, and you have to understand, I wasn't even born. I was born in '56, and this started in '53. So all my life, my mother, everything was hush hush. Nobody talked about it in the family. It was very embarrassing. It was very hush hush. And so I just knew that my father was the crazy guy that rode his bicycle around my small town, and everybody thought he was crazy. I grew up with that until when I got older and I started looking into stuff, and I got his medical files. In 1992, the government of Canada released ex gratia package for anybody that was under the care at that institution. And my mother applied for it. It was $100,000 that they were going to give these people for what they put them through. And my father died, and we didn't get anything. At that point, that's when I said to my mother, I was in my 20s, I said, we have to try and get his files. So I went and I got part of his files. There's a lot missing, but I got quite a few files. And then we went, then my mother couldn't handle it. She couldn't do it. It was just too hard on her. So I thought she destroyed the files. And when she passed away and we were cleaning out her house, I opened up the cedar chest and there was the envelope with my name on it. In other words, here you go, Lana, you can do it, It's your turn. She just couldn't handle it. My poor mother,
Right. And, honestly, and this is not to say anything against, who you were or whatever at, say, 20, the life experience that you had and the spot that you are in now, you're probably a lot better prepared for it than you were when you were 20 years old, emotionally, intellectually, and everything. So this is probably would have been the best time for you to do it. Now that you've had the years of other alternate research and now that in your hand, really is a smoking gun. Have they tried to, other than trying to do a payoff and stuff, have they done anything different in regards of changing of policies and stuff? Because I believe is that hospital still running?
It has an outpatient, I believe, just a clinic, I think. It's still there. It's still standing on Mount Royal. It looks like a real scary place, and an old building. Well, that's what we're going to do in April. We're going to do a rally at the college, at the university, and then we're going to march to the Allen Memorial Institute.
Is there anything that has assured you that they aren't still doing some sort of similar stuff to people now?
Who knows? Who knows? If they could get away with doing what they've done to over, at least I know about 400 people in our group who has been affected. And if they could do it to them, they can do it to other people. And in my opinion, I'm sure stuff is still going on today. I'm almost positive.
Well, let me ask you this. I know that that obviously you said that the doctor was from Scotland. A lot of the people that were helping in the experimentation and all that at the hospital, were they Canadian or were they Americans that were there as part of the CIA program?
I'm not sure about that. Dr. Cameron, I think there was another doctor, a couple of other doctors, they were Canadian. He recruited who he wanted, more or less.
Right. Well, I'll tell you this.
They all stick together, right? So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's sort of similar to law enforcement. I mean, I was in law enforcement for many years, and there is that thin blue line, and there's that brotherhood, that fraternity, or do you want to call it, of blue protecting blue. I guess that would be like white jackets protecting white jackets.
Exactly.
I hate to hear that on so many levels. I've visited Canada before, like the Edmonton area. I have a friend of mine who's a musician, and he always used to joke and call it Deadmonton. He said, "There's nothing there." I said, "No, I love it. It reminds me of home. It's very rural. He's a city kid, and everybody there was super sweet, and everybody was from everybody. There were actual Canadians there, but there was a lot of people from just different parts of the world, and everybody was very lovely, and it just surprises me to hear a story like that coming out of Canada, because you guys seem very, very,
Montreal's
very sweet.
Montreal's a bigger city than out in Edmonton,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, my father, for example, I let my father babysit my kids once. I thought he was okay, and I got called home, and he got my 7-year-old son so drunk, 7 years old, that my son was hospitalized. He could have died. And I said to him, "What did you do? Why did you do that?" He says, "I just wanted somebody to drink with."
Man,
Hello?
God, Canadian beer is like moonshine. What was he thinking?
He was drinking, giving him wine.
Oh. Well,
Bottles of wine. And then my younger daughter, there's a little shot glass at the end of the table with sugar in it. Thank God my daughter didn't like the taste of it, or he would have got them both drunk. But
wow.
And I had to call into work and say, "I can't come to work today because my son's in hospital because of intoxication."
Right. My kids are drunk. Yeah. Good God.
Mm-hmm. And the only reason I got out of not having my son taken away from me from social children's services
Right.
is the doctor that was in the emergency was an old doctor, and I explained to him in emerge who my father was and what my father was, and he understood, and he told me, I won't call children's services, but you have to promise me never to let him babysit you again. So
Yeah.
he was aware of the Dr. Cameron stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
you
or I
know,
could have lost my son. I could have. He would have been.
oh, absolutely, and that's what's I mean, thank God he was aware of that and this and that, but it's one of those type of really messed up things of going. It's sort of the local wisdom of like, yeah, that's a bad place and bad stuff has happened, but like you said, up until the lawsuits and whatnot, very little happened about it. Which, and honestly, $100,000
Well, I
for
went to a
destroying somebody's family is nothing.
yeah, and so we didn't get that, and so I put this bag of files have been up and down in my cupboard for the last years and years and years, and so we went to Mr. Stein. He was a lawyer who was doing. He won a few cases, but you had to have a lot of money to hire him, right? Well, we didn't have that kind of money because we were in poverty type of thing. And the files to him, and he said he's dead. He died, so I can't do anything. And I was furious. So I said, I'm writing a book. So I came back home and I hired a writer, and we started going through all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, it's a very emotional thing to be going through this over and over and over in my mind. It's very heartbreaking. And she was fine with it. She was writing the book, and then she came to me and she said, I got to go. Went to see my lawyer about this, and we have to change the names in the book because my lawyer says the government of Canada might sue me.
Right. Make it like a fiction
sorry,
based on
really
real
happened?
events. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, yeah, this really happened. I said, I'm not changing anything. So I stopped, and the bag went back up in my cupboard again. And then I was sitting at home one night, and my neighbor called me. She said, put on the Fifth Estate. I'm not sure if you're aware of that documentary program in Canada, the Fifth Estate. And there was Mr. Stein, the lawyer that I had seen years prior, and he was starting a lawsuit. And I got on the phone with him right away, and I've learned so much more since I've been with this group that I've, because we didn't talk about it. I'm telling you, it was such a quiet thing. My grandmother, I remember my mother phoning my grandmother for money, her sisters for money, and I remember, but it was all hush hush. We didn't know. And now it's been, the last 2 years that I've been just digging up stuff, and oh my gosh, what I've learned is amazing.
Well, let me ask you this real quick.
And it gives me guilt.
Well, it's one of those things of, when you were saying, you said, this is really emotional for me to write. I get that. And that, to me, that makes it all the more compelling and the need there to write it. It's, like you said, there's still so many people that's between the cracks that maybe never heard about the lawsuit or never were contacted or thought, well, maybe what happened to my father or my mother or my grandparents wasn't to that degree, but it did affect them, and they think, well, maybe they wouldn't.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to be a part of that. But I know in just a little bit that in just a little bit that I've read about some of the stuff that happened in Kentucky, in one of the Lexington hospitals, which is in eastern Kentucky, northeastern Kentucky. You were talking about the electroshock, the deprivation, light, noise, almost like a white noise where they'd flash lights to elicit seizures, and if this is too rough, please tell me not to talk about it. But I mean, I knew they would put people like genitals first into ice water, into hot water, and different things to try to, I don't know why. I guess to make them go into some sort of fugue state where they're able to be, more or less. I mean, sort of stuff you'd hear at like Guantanamo Bay or somewhere, or the Geneva Convention. All this stuff was supposed to stop all this, and it just went dark and went into black programs, and now it seems like it's still working. I mean,
it's torture. My father would, when we'd have to bring him back into hospital periodically because he would be just like a zombie, and a revolving door at the they had this at the hospital. and he was in that door, and he would not come out of that door for, I don't know, because he didn't want to go for it, because he was afraid of getting more shock treatments. So trying to get him out of this door, it was kind of funny at the time, but when I think back, the poor guy, you know?
Right.
And I feel so guilty because I treated him terribly as a teenager. But I didn't understand. I used to say to my mother, why don't you just divorce him? And she says, because it's not his fault. And I didn't understand that then. Now I understand it, why she couldn't divorce him. It wasn't his fault.
Right. Well, in the town that you're in, or the town that you were in, now obviously there was your father. Was there anyone else there, or have you spoken with anybody else that had been in the hospital that can help collaborate some of this? Obviously you have the paperwork and whatnot. I was just curious, if you said you're part of a group of people now, have different elements and aspects of stuff kind of come together, puzzle pieces fell into place now?
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. I know more now than I ever did. And the more I know, the angrier I get. And come on, people, step up to the plate and give us an apology, you know? At least admit your wrongs.
Yeah. Well, you know, and
admit your wrongs. You know, there's money there, but you know what? I want them to admit their wrongs.
You know, you were discussing how
even at my rally, I did everything proper across the top. Got the permit for to do everything. But we were doing it on Parliament Hill. We're suing the government of Canada. And we got there. I had my car full of speakers and everything. And they said, you're not in the system. So they wouldn't let us on. They sabotaged our rally. But we still had 125 people. We pulled stuff out of the car, ran across the street, we did our rally. Yay out for us, you know?
Right.
But just they always keep trying to stop us, but they're not going to stop us anymore because there's too many of us that are fighting at this point.
Well, let me ask you this real quick, and in 1 minute we'll have to take a break. But in this last minute or so, now, you had said at the time of the experimentations you weren't born yet. Now, were there any lasting effects handed down to you or any other the children of the people who were experimented on, be it some sort of physical ailment or mental ailment caused by some of the experimentation and manipulation of the people beforehand?
I hope not.
Well, I just didn't know.
I'm okay.
Right. You know, because I mean, I've heard, they injected in lots of different chemicals and things, and God knows what they injected in these people.
My mother always said I was born before, because I often asked her that, you know? And she said, no, you were born before, and then when I got the files, I saw it, and it says right in there that my father wanted to have another child, and she was against it, and, well, here I am, and I seem to be okay, you know? I've never had any mental problems or anything like that, so, you know.
Right. Well, I meant, you know, like
I don't think that
epilepsy or, you know, maybe some of the chemicals might have affected your kidneys or something. And like, again, I'm not trying to get too deeply into your personal medical history, but you know, that's a whole nother level, you know, of lawsuit.
Just the fact that we grew up, just the fact that we grew up in a house, and all my friends, I couldn't have friends over because you never knew what my father was going to do. I'll give you, it's a crazy story, but my father was driving his bicycle because he lost his driver's license, and he was going by the dentist office. Okay, this is a man that has no teeth in his mouth because of all the drugs he had taken. His teeth rotted out. And he's going by the dentist office, and he stops on his bike and takes an envelope out of the mailbox, and it's addressed to the dentist. He opens it up, and it's a check for $10,000. Somebody's paying the dentist for their dental work. He proceeds over to the bank. And in those days, anything over $10,000, they had to take a picture. He stood there with the check in front of him, smiling with not one tooth in his mouth, and they cashed the check.
Wow. Did these people not know him,
all
though?
Of a sudden, he's got all kinds of money.
That's crazy.
No, they didn't know him. Yeah, so here he got all this money, and we couldn't figure out where he got this money from until my mother figured it out and got his bank book. And that's another thing. My mother had to go over to the dentist, explain the situation, pay back the money, you know, because he didn't realize he did anything wrong. Can you imagine standing
Yes.
there with dirty old shorts on and a t-shirt, no teeth? I'm the dentist.
That's yeah.
Like
I don't.
those are things we went through.
Wow.
We went through this stuff, all kinds of stuff, all the time, all the time.
Wow.
I mean, I'd come home from school. He'd be high or low. So he would be either high, like crazy high, or he'd be in his bedroom sweating. And I'd come home from school and I'd open the door to the smell of sweat and bad breath. And I'd go over and he'd be just staring at me. And I'm like 7 years old, 8 years old. And I'd say, Daddy, do you want a cup of tea? And I'd try and make him a cup of tea. And I'm 7 years old, don't forget. My mother was out trying to make money working, and my sister was still at school, and I'd come home, and this is what I dealt with when I came home. And to the point I didn't know if he was alive or dead.
Yeah, I can imagine it. Lana, if you'll hang on for 1 second, we'll
Yeah.
discuss more of this. Everybody, we're talking about Lana Mills Sowchuk. I'm kind of at a loss for words at this. This is really a heartbreaking story, and it goes much deeper than any of us really can imagine at this point. We will be discussing that deeper, and also the lawsuit right after this break. Stay tuned. Wild Hair Studios Rock Shop in Paducah, Kentucky has a lot to offer. Their tagline is positive energy that works, and it really is your one source shop for healing crystals, aromatherapy, essential oils, unique stone jewelry, psychics, light work, chakra balancing, you name it. Even sound healing, everything. They offer it all. Even classes in light work. And this is all located at 311 Broadway, very centrally located in Paducah, Kentucky. And you can also look them up on www.nicerockshop.com. Make sure to go in there and tell them that Steve sent you and get your enlightenment on. That is Wild Hair Studios Rock Shop in downtown Paducah, Kentucky. All right, everybody. We're back. It's the House of Asher show. I'm your host, Steve Asher, and we're talking with Lana Mills Sowchuk. And we were, before the break, just getting into some of the really horrific. I mean, I'm trying to find the right words for it. Horrific, heart wrenching, all that stuff. It doesn't really do it justice. A kid that's just past being a toddler, should be learning, their ABCs and colors and whatever. Having to kind of more or less spoon feed an adult, which is extremely kind of volatile and unpredictable, and you just don't know what you've got, and I hate that, I hate that to hear any child went through it. Me and my wife are very involved with special needs stuff, Special Olympics and special needs adoptions and stuff, and we've had children that have been not in that situation, but from not like I know obviously your father was not trying to be neglectful in any way. He couldn't take care of himself, so how could he not take care of you? But but we've seen the emotional and the psychological marks it leaves on people. Let me ask you, how did, obviously you developed different, obviously you grew up with a different kind of mindset, I'm assuming. How did you, and have you, kind of been able to cope and put some of that to rest and move on to like a functioning adult? I mean, how did you do it?
Because my mother was such a strong woman. My mother's family, her side of the family, were so supportive and so strong. I spent every summer at my aunt's house because my mother was trying to work and visit him at the hospital. So it was a family thing that they helped my mother. So we were lucky that we had such a strong family to fight it, to help. My mother had so much help from her sisters and her mother and stuff that, we were so lucky, because other people in the group have been put in foster homes. They never even knew they were their mother. One of the women, especially those postpartum people, A lot of them were put in for postpartum, and then they come out and they can't take care of their babies. Imagine. And they go up for adoption. And one lady jumped off the Mercy Bridge and committed suicide. I mean, I don't want to get into other people's stories, but what
Right.
I've been hearing is just horrific, horrific. Yeah. And my mother, she made sure that my sister and I were schooled properly. I went to college. My sister went to university. How she managed to pay for this, she got some grants from some anyway. We got our education, and you know, we went on. My sister's a teacher, and I was working at the bank, but now I own my own business. I take care of seniors privately for 21 years now. So it helped me do that because I'm dealing with people with Alzheimer's and you know, dementia, and I sort of relate a lot to that with my father
Yeah. It's almost like
when I'm dealing with my clients.
right. Well, and it's one of these things that I'm not sugarcoating it at all, but I'm saying I know you don't know this about me. Have a special needs son, and we also had another special needs son who passed away due to an epileptic seizure. So a lot of this is hitting me personally as well.
Sorry.
But well, the thing was though, dealing
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of his medical and all that. I had always been in law enforcement before that, but after that, I started working teaching life skills to special needs adults, and so I was able to take a lot of the stuff I learned from dealing with my son and incorporate it into that. So thankfully, I was
Right.
able to take a negative and try to make
That's exactly
some
what I've
positive.
done.
That's all you can do, you know.
Yeah. My father was musical. My father was musically played guitar, country and western music, all the old songs, you know, "You Are My Sunshine" and all that stuff. And he'd be playing in the basement, and I'd be upstairs with a pillow over my head trying to go to sleep because I had to go to school the next day. And you couldn't tell him to stop; he wouldn't stop. And I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. And now I've got a songbook, and I call it Ivor's Golden Songbook. And I know all the words, and they, you know, it's pretty cool that at least I can sing the songs with my seniors that I take care of, and they know all the words because of my dad. How ironic, eh?
You know, there's a and
Pretty ironic.
when I hear your voice, because you know, there's something called survivor's guilt, and I have that too. Um, and I'm not saying, how do I say this? This is my assumption, okay? So if I'm wrong, just say, hey, you're wrong. Um, you know, it's one of these things where you didn't know what was going on. How could you? You know, how could you
No,
realize what was going on with your dad?
get that.
And I can hear you kind of still carry that with you. Like, you know, if I just would have realized and stuff, but you know, you couldn't, you can't. And like I said, all you can do is do what you're doing right now, um, and help the people that you're
Hmm.
helping. And I think that's probably the best sort of testament to the love you had for your dad is what you're doing with these other people and making their lives better. So
Hmm. Yeah. I even got a tattoo. Imagine that. My age, 63. I got it.
uh,
My father's original signature over my heart.
that's nice. You
Yeah.
know, it's funny.
Never wanted to do that before, but this came to, you know.
you're tougher than me. Like I said, my brother, ex-military Vietnam era guy, had a tattoo shop, and so everybody sees me, and you know, it's like looking at my arms and you know whatever. It's like, what's going on? He said, man, he's probably got like 200 tattoos. He got all the ink for the family, and he was my older brother, so there wasn't really much. It wasn't like some people get a tattoo as rebellious. I'm like, he's already done it, so I have to do something different, you know. But yeah, I like memorial tattoos. I
Hmm.
think that's much better than
Yeah. It's like, you know, it's my love for my dad, and that's now that I know exactly what happened. I had to do this, you know.
right.
Sorry, I'm breaking down right now. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, that's you know what? That's you being a human. There's nothing wrong with that at all. You know, I'll say this: um, the fact that not only one government, but I'm sure CIA, maybe even British intelligence, and a whole lot of other people took people that really had nothing wrong with them and subjected them to this level of
Hmm.
just mistreatment. You know, these are supposed to be your citizens,
Yeah.
the people you're there to protect and to serve and all that, and you turn around. Um, you know, I'm amazed. I am amazed and also sadly not amazed that people haven't turned to write it in the streets. Now, I guarantee if they said, well, hey, I'm sorry, they knew we're taking all the next generation iPhones and not going to have them out, people would freak out. But something like that, it's weird. You put 50 years in the front of a story, and it's like people don't care. I don't understand it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What would have my life been like if my father did not go through this experimental stuff? You wonder. You wonder. What would I have been, I mean, I turned out okay, but maybe I would have been better, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to say.
Well, it depends on, this is slightly a kind of a left turn on what we're talking about, but, I've talked to different people about everything from alternate timelines to different universes and stuff, and sometimes just one thing can change it. I'm sure if I hadn't had some of the people with health care and special needs in my extended family as a young kid, I probably never would have done adoptions, which meant, my two little boys would have ended up in a Catholic orphanage or somewhere, and probably would have had the life expectancy that they ended up having. Our one son, he's getting ready to turn 14, and they said he would never make it past 9 or 10. So, I don't know. I think unfortunately
kudos to you.
No. I will say this, and I'm sorry to bring it up, but to me it's sort of a similar deal. It gets me because people always goes, well, it takes special people to do. And I'm like, no, they'll make you special. And just like what you're doing right now, you're a special person to do this. Because it's, odds are you're probably not going to see a whole lot of compensation. Like you said, you just want the apology. You want it to be out. You want their voices to be heard and remembered and to be honored.
Yeah.
And
I want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to scream off the top of the mountain. Like that's how I am right now.
Right.
Or before I was suppressed and I didn't know what was going on. Now
right.
I know. And I mean, this rally, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I got that rally, and a lot of the people in the group were skeptical. Oh, nothing's not going to work. Well, guess what? We did it. We had 125 people there. I'm so proud of myself for pushing and doing this whole rally thing. Because, mind you, we didn't have our media that we were supposed to have at it. That was another little sabotagey thing that went on. But hey, we had NPR. That's Boston, eh?
Right.
NPR. You've heard of that, haven't you, Steve?
Oh yeah. Well, we have
We're
NPR
getting more
here.
coverage from the Americans than we are from our own. I just don't understand. Yeah.
Well,
we're getting more coverage from the Americans than we are with our own journalists. I don't understand it.
That's the damnedest thing. Pardon my language, but
if I was a journalist, I'd be jumping on me.
Yeah, but maybe your editor's going, nuh-uh, that's too hot. We have interest connected to whatever medical company. We have interest connected to, we don't bite the hand that feeds. Unfortunately, a lot of times, journalism sometimes is decided on who's holding the leash. I hate to say that, but anymore it's going to be internet radio, or it's going to be different magazines like that.
If I was a young journalist, if I was a young journalist coming into it, what a historical case to be writing on. I just don't understand it. You'd be on the top of the thing when it comes out. Anyway, I'm not a journalist, so I can't help.
No, the thing is, a lot of times when
I find it strange.
Well, when Associated Press or NPR picks it up, there's a thing, it'll go up, and then it goes up kind of into the cloud, and then it sort of disperses all over. And there's going to be certain people that's going to pick that up and grab it. When our mutual friend Kimmy mentioned this, I had knew a little bit about some of the mind control experimentation and some of the. There was a thing that I think it was in Tulupo, Mississippi, where they had injected mosquitoes with syphilis and let them go in like the minority parts of town, like lower income and black sections of town, to see if black men had a stronger tolerance against it. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's for population control, and this is documented. This is stuff that Americans did to Americans. All kinds of different stuff with the LSD testing and all the different Stanford or Yale and all those different colleges that would do experimentations under another guise, just like this, to do mind control and brainwashing and all the same crap.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go through different levels. Like you said, there would be the physical shock treatment, then there'd be the chemical restraints, as we would call it, LSD and DMT and all the different stuff. And who knows what it is now. And honestly, I'm sure it's still going on. Why would they stop?
Sure it is. Well, when I had my son, he was in the hospital a couple of days old. They came and approached me and asked me if my son could be used as an experimental for SIDS, SID. And I went, no way.
What?
Because I knew what they did to my dad. My son wasn't going to be a part of the experiment. I didn't care what they said,
Right.
But they did come and ask me.
Yeah. Well, it's
very careful, like no way.
Well, we've long been taught, if you go back to, I don't remember if you remember like the old shows like Ben Casey and all those, movies back or television shows in the day. Young doctor comes in, confident, white lab coat, clipboard. He's an authority. He's an authoritative figure. He can be trusted. He's there to help you,
People trusted.
Right. And they manipulate your trust into making bad decisions, or not because you're not well informed, and you go on what information they give you. They give you half truths, and then they turn around and say, "Well, you knew about blah blah blah," and it's like, "Well, no, I didn't know about this," and that's how they get away with it. And they say, "Oh, well, experimentation, blah blah. There's a certain amount of risk and such and such," but a lot of times it was. If they even asked people who were in a situation, it was prisoners. Hey, we'll knock some time off if you agree to take this test. Or college students who are, struggling to make it, much less to eat, much less anything else. They find people that are in disparaging situations. They're not going to the I don't know like the ritzy part of the area in Canada you're in is, but they're not going to go to New York or certain gated communities in California and talk to these kids. People would lose their minds. They'd freak out. They're going to find people who have no support group.
Like this, in our the Allen Memorial, it seemed to be postpartum women were the majority. A lot of Jewish people were part of it, and why my father got picked is beyond me. Because he wasn't postpartum, and he wasn't Jewish, and he wasn't. I don't know why they picked my dad, because he was already in the clinic.
Maybe
asthma. I don't know.
Maybe they were trying to use him as well. No, they couldn't use him as a control because they wouldn't have done anything with him. I'm assuming they would have had a control if they were using any sort of using any kind of scientific method. You almost always have to have a control patient that really nothing's done with up to a certain point. Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this in the last few minutes that we've got. Now, if I can ask you, do you have children?
Yes.
Okay.
2.
What is their take on all this? Has this kind of changed their outlook on medicine and medical professions and stuff like that? Because everybody always wants...
That's a whole different story.
Wow.
Well, my mother was always the babysitter, so my kids were there with my father. It was nothing for my father to put the kids on the top of the car, the box on the top of the car, and put the 5 grandchildren in the box and go 60 miles an hour down the street. The kids loved it, but they could, So my kids, they thought it was fun because it was like they were playing with another kid.
Right.
My father,
They could drive.
So they didn't look at it like... Now they're starting to learn more. They were at the rally, and my son was here one time when I was doing another interview on the phone, and I looked over at him, and he was just bawling. He's 38 years old, and he was just bawling. He had no idea. So we kept it from them, too, It's sort of like you just don't tell things like that to your kids because you don't want them to be upset. But it's all coming out now, so I don't know. I've got a grandson, too. My daughter's had a child, so I've got a grandson. He's named Ivor. His middle name's Ivor.
Well, and that's the thing is that
my kids,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
One's doing okay, one's not doing okay.
Well, it's there's such a ripple effect that for some reason agencies and companies think, well, throw a little money their way, it'll be fine, and it's putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's like it reaches out so far from that initial moment, and it affects every generation after that.
Definitely. Because I'm always feeling poor. Even though I'm okay, I still always feel poor. Like I haven't got enough money. I never have enough money,
Right.
Because
No.
I've been brought up with that poorness in me.
Right. No, my mother and father were both Depression-era kids. I think they were maybe 9 or 10 when Pearl Harbor went down. And so, yeah, no, I understand that. And I'm gonna admit something to you, and you'll probably think it's a little bit goofy, but like my dad was one of those guys, like he would go to Taco Bell or like what you got, like Tim Hortons up there? Is that what you guys got?
Yeah.
Like say you're there, and before you leave, you'll get a couple napkins and maybe some syrup or something to take home with you. Stick it on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he was. I had to keep myself from doing stuff like that. Like I'll get like a wad full of napkins when I leave. I'm like, what am I going to use these for? So it's crazy. Which again, I guess I'm at that age where I'm. And we had that moment in that time too when we were pretty broke, a whole lot of beans and whatnot. Thank God for the beans though, but it was one of those things where you never, you always hear like these girls that are like say supermodels or something, and they say like, look, I always see myself as, and this is their words, that same little fat girl. I never got past being that little fat girl, and that's how they think. They still think like that because that's what they knew and that's what they were raised in, and the things that you went through.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's amazing you get up and out of bed, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, my cousins, thank God for my cousins, because the green garbage bag would come in twice a year, and it was secondhand clothes, and thank God for that, because we didn't have money to buy clothes. I was so jealous that my cousin had patent leather shoes, and I had old party shoes.
Right.
But what are you going to do, You just live with it.
Well, let me ask you this, too. I knew you'd mentioned your mother's side of the family is very supportive, but you never said anything about your dad's side. Were they there in any way? Were they, what was their deal?
My father's father died when he was 9, so he never had a father, and his sisters he had one brother, but we weren't close to them, like we were more my mother's side. Growing up, I stayed at my aunt's house all the time. She was like my second mother. But my father's side we weren't close to them at all, really.
Yeah, that's just.
Because I think my mother. Well, because if I remember my mother didn't get along with his mother, like the mother-in-law thing.
Right.
And my mother, I remember her saying. She did not want him going to the Allen Memorial, but his mother, my father's mother, insisted that he go there and get his asthma cured. And my mother she did not want him to do this. And I think that's when we sort of separated the family, when my mother said, he listened to his mother. He didn't listen to his wife. He should have listened to his wife.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Which
so
I
it was like... Yeah, so I don't know. Life is crazy.
No, it truly is, and it's truth is a lot of times stranger and more horrific than fiction. Because you see so many shows, you have like the doctor in the lab coat, and maybe he's got the monocle, and it's the room with all the lights in it, and it's almost come passe. It's almost become like, well, okay, well, of course they're going to have a mad scientist in a room and all that, but that crap really happened. Well, let me ask you this too. I know you're talking about you're going to be doing a rally at a college before too long. Is there some information you want to get out for either people that can contact you or some which way where they can find out more about this? Or do you happen to have anything like a GoFundMe or anything like that to help cover some of the expenses of the stuff that you're doing for all this work?
We had a funding on the last one. But we haven't really got into it, doing it yet. But it's going to be apparent. It's going to be on April the 17th, I know that's the date we picked, and it's supposed to be outside of McGill University. But Julie Gold, she's the plaintiff of the group. She's the one that would be more. I don't know if you've spoken to Julie.
Yeah, I actually did. I was trying to finagle where I had you guys both on the same time, and it just logistics of it. She had some things going on, and we just couldn't do it. I hope to have Julie on either as a follow up to this, as sort of a part 2, when I can.
Yeah, because she's the plaintiff for the class action. She's more informed than I am about the history of the group of the story. I said I'd come on and tell you my story because I'm not familiar. I'm just learning now. I'm in the learning stages of what happened. Right. Where Julie is phenomenal. She knows more than I do. She's taught me so much.
Well, I think you did fine, and that's the thing about it is that, and if we can do that and have, because obviously she's going to have a personal story of this as well, because obviously she has family involved with this, but
her father, yeah,
right. The more that you have,
her father's the other one that didn't have depression.
Okay,
he went in for something with his faith. Yeah.
I think the more you can put a personal face and a name to an event, it humanizes it. I think in history we have seen how what humans do to humans when we dehumanize and take names away from people. And I mean, you just got to look at World War II to see that, and even stuff currently. If you can make it personable, I mean, I've always heard that if somebody tries to kidnap you, try to get them to talk to you and tell them your name, and once they kind of get that you are a human being, you supposedly are less likely to get murdered.
Well, all my friends from school, with all this coming out on my Facebook and that they're like, what? Really? Like they had no clue that this was happening to my dad. As growing up.
Yeah, it's not really dinner party talk,
Yeah. Crazy.
Well, Lana, we're right about the end of it.
I hope I gave you some. I hope I can get the exposure out there. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not, I'm not an actress or anything like that. This is me, story, my true story.
No, see, for me that's perfect. The thing is, what I try to do different with my show is, even if I have someone who is whatever connected to a movie or a book or whatever, I always want to know where, how you got into this, how it affected you, what's the outcome, what's your future plans with it, because I don't want to do a talking head thing and talk about the latest, obviously talk about their book or whatever, but I want to know the person. I want to know what you did as a kid, who you were as a kid, things that scared you, things that made you laugh, because that's the human part of it. I want to talk to human beings. I don't want this to feel like you're doing a job interview. I want us to feel like we're really just sitting and breaking this down and talking about some stuff that sometimes it can be funny, sometimes it can be sad,
Yeah, as friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Anna, like I said, we're at that 2-minute whistle, so I'm going to do a segue out of here, and if you will stick around for the 1 minute after I do my outro, I will touch base with you before we hang up.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, thank you again for being on. It was a real honor to have you on, and I hope you guys get what's coming to you and get the justice for your father that he deserves.
Oh, me too. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Wow, that was pretty heavy, guys. I want you guys to go out there and enjoy the rest of your day. That was kind of a wrenching story for me. I'm trying to kind of get my focus back, but go out there and enjoy the day if you can. Get some sun on your face and be with the ones you love, and let them know you love them, because we're all here for a limited time. But again, go out there and have some fun. But as the sun sets behind the pines and the shadows grow long, check behind your closet door, beneath your bed, out that back hallway, maybe out toward the deep woods. You never know. Might be something weird or spooky down there. Might be something new and exciting that you've found. And there is learning in fear, if you don't let it control you. But until next time, God bless you guys. Make sure to check out stevieasher.com and enjoy your day. Be safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. I love you guys. Bye-bye.